Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We'll be starting shortly, just giving a minute for people to join and we'll get started. So hang in there. We'll be starting in a minute, really. Thank you for waiting and for joining. All right. I think we've given everyone a minute to join. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for spending part of your day today with us. Today's session, we want it to be very, very interactive, and we will have some polls going on. And make sure also to use the Q&A section to send us your questions. We will be covering them at the end. And as always, we will be sharing this recording with you. So before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Karen Hassin. I am a NetApp employee. I work as a product enablement specialist here at NetApp. I support FSx for ONTAP, and I am really specializing on VMware workloads. And joining me today, we have Evgeny from AWS. Evgeny, do you want to present yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. My name is Evgeny Karasik. I'm with AWS, part of the AWS Transform group. And thank you for NetApp team to inviting me into this session. And we are going to talk about exciting partnership that we were working on for the last half year. And eventually, what does it mean for customers that are using VMware, NetApp, Amazon FSx, and additional services like Transform?
Definitely. And really, I think the topic today is really fresh out of the oven, like they say. Like it's really something completely new. It's a new integration that we have with AWS Transform, with FSx for ONTAP. We will be covering what what Transform is, what FSx for ONTAP is. And for those of you that are not familiar with this, we will be kind of leading into it and explaining everything for you and what that means for your modernization journey when you're thinking about moving your VMware workloads to AWS. So with that, I want to start off with a poll. And it's about what do you think really is the most impact that impacts migrations from VMware, and why do they take so long? So you have quite a few options. You have data gravity and bandwidth. You have the actual execution and the testing of cutover, the waves, not knowing about dependencies, and that may stall that process. Maybe you are using third-party tools, and maybe you think you need to replace them or you have those tools are very, very deeply integrated within your workflows, and you're kind of afraid of breaking something. Or the fifth one, which is not less important, is having budget constraints or needing retraining to learn how to work in the cloud. So, wow, let's see the results here. Okay, so interesting. What do you think, Evgeny, about this? Very
I think it's
spread.
kind of, representative because there is no one clear kind of, leading factor there. It's a complex problem, right? It's a complex problem to solve, but still there is some kind of, good amount of votes for the specific aspects like mechanical execution or mechanism that we're using for the execution, testing, cutover, and so on. But I think, Carol, we need to take it one level down, right? We need to kind of break it to the smaller part of what exactly we are migrating. It is all about compute, it is all about data, it's all about network, or what are the kind of components that we are moving to the cloud, and which component is most problematic one.
Right. Yeah. And I think with that, I think we can go. I'll pass it on to you because you're the expert on this part.
Yeah. So the overall kind of mechanism for the migration is really repetitive, right? You need to assess your environment. You need to plan your migration. You need to break it down to the applications when migration waves and so on and so forth. And then basically there is an execution piece or what we call the migration and modernization, right? Because customers are very often using that opportunity not just to lift and shift their existing on-prem environment, but also modernize it to better cloud native architectures. So imagine that process repeat for thousands of the servers or virtual machines that you have, right? Which is kind of
Mhm.
very labor intensive and error prone and collaboration. It's also one of the biggest bottlenecks over there.
Definitely. And especially in larger organizations where you have a lot of siloed teams that don't talk to each other or may not even know that when they are touching something, it may break something else on the other side. So it's really challenging just trying to manage through all that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, I think today we do want to kind of zoom in on the data, right? We do want kind of to look at the migration problem, like we saw in the poll. There's multiple answers for all problems that it's raised, but we wanted to look at this through the lens of data. And definitely the data gravity is one of the difficult problems to solve, right?
Mhm.
It's not just about the volume, right? The volume, velocity, and consistency, that's what drives the kind of, the complexity over there. But all that together, if you kind of mixing or blending it together with compute that we need to migrate and network that we need to build, and so on and so forth, moving the data at scale, in motion, synchronously, and make it available, and minimize downtime, and so on and so forth, that become a really challenge, right? And that's the
Mhm.
challenge that probably most of you are familiar with because I am not familiar with any workload that runs without data, right? So data and the data gravity definitely something that contributes significantly to complexity of the migrations. Would you agree to
And
that,
I think,
Karen?
yeah, I agree 100%. And I think like a lot of people, when they're starting their journey to move to the cloud, the first thing that they think about is about the compute and that they leave the storage like a second thought. You know, they don't put a lot of thought into it, but it's really very, very important. And it really dictates how fast you will migrate, how easy it is will to manage on day two operations once you've already migrated. So there's a lot of things that storage has an impact in, and sometimes people leave it like a second class citizen. You know, they don't, oh, it's storage, okay. But it's just as important as when you're migrating
Yeah.
that compute. Mhm.
All right, let's move on. And, and,
Okay.
and here we would like to dive into the AWS Transform, right? I don't know people can vote in the chat if they do know what is the AWS Transform or not. But AWS Transform is a new service that we launched recently, about a year ago. And this is the AWS solution for agentic migration and modernization. It is designed for the specific use cases like VMware migration, Windows, so full stack window modernization, mainframe modernization, code transform, or any custom transformation for code, APIs, framework, and so on. So we kind of build an agentic solution that is based on the AI or Amazon Bedrock as a platform and basically
Mhm.
helps our customers to kind of move on fast with their migration for those particular use cases and beyond that.
So these are the agents, right? You have agents, specialized agents for
Yeah,
cloud,
we do
for
yeah,
mainframe.
we do
Mhm.
have more detailed slide on that, but basically,
Yeah.
yes, we are building purpose-based agents that are designed or kind of developed in the specific mission in mind, right? So agents that are dedicated to migrate your VMware infrastructure or optimize your mainframe modernization or change your code and APIs and so on.
Right. So I guess this is one of those agents. right?
Yeah, and today we are going to talk specifically for the migration, right? I can spend another webinar for talking about migrations and the other agents, but today we do want to zoom into the migration domain, right? Because this is what we
Mhm.
promised to you, right? And
Yes.
the transform for migration is, like I said, it's specialized agent that basically takes any part of your migration journey and simplify the end-to-end migration flow. And we will break it down to the specific stages and how specific agents are addressing specific challenges in each stage. But overall, it helps you to intelligently plan and optimize the migration waves, automate
Mhm.
network translation and ending zone, and most importantly, rehost your virtual machine, including also the storage. And that's the part that we are going to kind of crystallize on, because overall promise of the transform is first of all to lower your cost, right? We are
Yes.
targeting the most pressing use cases, like for example VMware exits, right? Customers that are not super happy with the transition of VMware to Broadcom and all the changes that happens there, looking for the better alternatives in the cloud, right?
Mhm.
To eliminate the hypervised license needs or optimize the infrastructure cost and so on. And the second one, this is the faster migration, right? We started with the kind of an observation of why it takes so long and what are the problems that we facing during the migration. So the promise of the VMware Transform is basically to move faster, to allow you as a customers to take the decision faster, and basically to accelerate your overall network migration by the factor of X, right? So for example, we are aiming to migrate your network with the conversion of 80x, right?
That's huge. 80x.
Yeah, that's significant, right? Uh,
Definitely.
but on the way, we also help you to improve the security. Security remains one of the key concerns or constraints that customers moving to the cloud in generally, right? And it's better to take it as a day one problem, right? It's better to take, like Karen, you said, customers also treat storage as a day two problem often, and this is what we are trying to kind of help them to improve. Security as well, right? Security is also supposed to be day one problem for you when you are moving to the cloud, and you
Mhm.
do expect from us and from customers, from partners, sorry, like NetApp, to provide you a secure day one secured solution for your data, for your compute, for your network, best practices, and all about that. And this is what these solutions provide. And of course, you can innovate, right? You can innovate during the migration. You can take some decisions and modernize, like I say, your infrastructure to better services. And FSX for ONTAP, for example, this is one of the key examples when you migrate to the cloud, you can take a very significant modernization decision. You can take any attached SAN storage, not necessarily FSX and NetApp ONTAP, for example, and decide that you are going to benefit from all the ONTAP kind of features in the cloud using managed service that AWS provides. Make sense so far?
Yeah, yeah, and definitely, and so it helps you to migrate no matter what is your on-prem. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be NetApp. It doesn't have to be. It's whatever. You're agnostic, and you can move it to the cloud. And I think another big benefit now that's making the case for cloud migration even better is the fact that hardware is so expensive to get. First of all, it takes a long time to get those hardwares because of the market conditions right now. And the costs are skyrocketing. So really, and AWS has kept the prices, so it hasn't increased. So I think that also makes the case for cloud even more appealing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
definitely, yeah. All right.
Okay, so now
Okay.
let's talk about the agents, and like I
Migration.
promised,
Yeah.
yeah, let's break them down for the specific
Mhm.
phases and stages. By the way, there is a question in the chat specifically for the mainframe modernization, which is kind of not on the in scope of this discussion, but I think first of all you can find some similarities over there from what I'm explaining about VMware, but you also can look on our website for AWS Transform for the specific modernization for mainframe. So just to be clear,
Mhm.
we are focusing on the migrations, and if there is a need, we can do some follow-up for the mainframe as well, right?
Yeah.
So for
Yes.
the agents, we start with the discovery and data ingestion, right? We need to analyze what we have on our on-premises, what kind of servers, what kind of data, or what kind of storage we are planning to migrate, and so on and so forth. So this is where the assessment agent is responsible for. And this is what discovery and data ingestion stage basically is helping you to automate. For the migration planning, we are creating application grouping and wave planning. You can create some specific what is scenarios, right? You can figure out what does it mean for you to migrate to FSx for ONTAP in terms of cost, in terms of operational model, and so on and so forth. So you can build the different scenarios and business cases for your management and leadership to quantify the migration project. If you don't have any presence in AWS, we also can help you to build the landing zone, right? Everything related to organizational units, accounts, workload accounts, source control policies, everything that is related to the foundation in AWS, that can be automated through the landing zone accelerator and landing zone agent. Those two solutions that currently AWS provides for customers that would like to build your foundation in AWS from the ground. We can use the brownfield, right? We can use also your existing account on organization units as well and figure out or verify that it is matching your migration plan. Network migration basically helps you to determine automatically what kind of network infrastructure you will need, like VPC, subnet, security groups, and so on. So network migration agent is responsible for that task. And finally, there is a rehost and containerization agents that basically helps you to figure out what will be your target compute and what is the storage or what are the storage parts that needs to be attached to that. And I can help you today. We can help you with more than one storage. Previously, we were supporting only EBS, Elastic Block Storage, as a target storage for your compute. But now we are adding FSx for ONTAP, which means that if you are currently running your ONTAP environment on premises, you can make those migration natively to the cloud and keep all the operational efficiencies over there, right? And this is how it is maps to your current VMware stack, right? So on the left-hand side, you can see how the VMware stack looks like. And again, there are kind of, high-level overview. Don't be so religious about how it is landing here. But on the right-hand side, you can see exact mapping of what are the constructs, like we call them, in AWS that basically represents your VMware infrastructure or migrated infrastructure in the cloud, right? And here you can see that for the clusters with vSAN, regardless if they are running on ONTAP or any other storage provider, your migration options today is extended from Amazon EBS also to Amazon FSx for ONTAP, which is huge, right? And we will elaborate about that and Karen give you some kind of
Yeah, I will
deep dive
cover
on that.
yeah, exactly. But one thing I love about this slide is that it really kind of translates to the VMware admins what you're used to seeing on VMware and how that translates to AWS, like the parity, like
Yeah.
so it's really, I think it's a very self-explanatory slide. I love it. Thank you. Right. And I think that just to reinstate that message that now we are FSx for ONTAP is supported by AWS Transform as a storage target, so you can migrate your data into FSx for ONTAP. And I think you want to explain how it was before, like how it used to be the
Yes.
migration before we had this integration.
Yeah, and this is the day two, right? This is the day two, like we call it, right? Since it was not directly supported by us, right? So customers often did those migrations by the tier, right? So we have compute and we have the sysadmins and the compute specialists that or application owners that basically takes the servers and this is what they care. They care about web server, they care about the application server and so on. There's a network team that is responsible for building network connectivity between application components and cross accounts and cross what we call the AWS regions. And of course, there is the storage team, and the storage team cares about the storage being ONTAP or any other solution that you have on premises. And before, those migrations were done by each tier separately. So the application tier, application groups were migrating their compute, networking was building the network, and storage was moving the entire volumes or VLANs or loans to the cloud, right? Which is reasonable approach if you don't have one solution that manage them all, right? The synchronization of all those components and verification, rollback, everything becomes very, very kind of unnatural and very complex, right? Think about you move your storage, but you didn't move your compute yet, and therefore your application is not really functional. How you are doing the cutover, how you are doing your testing in the cloud, and so on. If networking team didn't provide you in VPCs and subnets to land on, your entire stack is broken. You cannot move on. You need to wait up until the network team will confirm that you need to revalidate that. So very, very complex and very, very hard to synchronize. And if something goes not well, which often does, you're in very problematic state because rolling it back also becomes very, very unnatural and very, very complex.
Mhm. So now this is the fun part.
Yeah, that's the fun part, and this is the nice automation of how basically the transform simplifies that or how it's automated. Everything is moved together, right? Your compute, network, and storage move together because we determine it as a single migration unit called being application or migration wave. And we are determining what is the compute that needs to move, what is the network piece, or what are the network parts that need to exist in the cloud so your application can communicate properly, and what is the database, what is the data that needs to move to the cloud, right? For this particular application, we're not talking about moving the entire rack of your block storage, right? For those tasks, by the way, there are better tools like SnapMirror and any others that know how to move your data to the cloud. That's not the problem. The problem is how you are correlate between your compute, your network, and the data piece that needs to be moved to the cloud. So you will move only the relevant part, and you can do the migration journey safely and gradually by specific waves or by specific applications. At the end of the day, first of all, it is reducing the time. And secondly, it's also reduced the downtime of your application because once your application is landed in the cloud, is fully functional one, including the application tier, database, and network, basically you can do the cutover almost immediately, and you can start functioning in the cloud with your new app right away.
And I think one of the best parts of it is that you're using natural language to interact with the AI. There's no coding. You can actually, I think it's super, super easy
Yeah,
to
that's the beauty of our age. That's the beauty of the reality that we are living in, right? So the agents basically allows you to interact through the chat interface. You can ask questions. You can steer the migration to the way that it is relevant to you, and you can also kind of traverse between the stages. You can kind of now shape and form your migration as you go through the natural language processing interface and the big data behind it, right? So we have the AI, the Bedrock AI, that helps you to asking the right questions and leading you towards the right direction. That's absolutely key um, kind of advantage here, right?
Mhm.
Right. So what you are get, right? What you are get as a customer for this particular functionality, like I said, you can move any attached storage, any attached block storage to be precise, right? For the block storage that is resizing on your on-premises environment or any other cloud, basically any attached storage can be transformed to the FSX for ONTAP. We are reading the data from your device and we are writing it to the FSX on top, so we don't really bother what is the source or what is the source environment, but we are promising to land on the FSX for ONTAP in the right way. We are creating the replications, we are verifying the data, and we are splitting it and running it as during the test or cutover um, phases. You don't need the other tools, right? You don't need other tools. One tool manage them all, right? No dependency between the storage, and no dependency between network. Everything is handled as an end-to-end flow.
Definitely. And now for a poll. So we want to ask you how familiar you are with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. So really, it's a really simple question. We just want to gauge your knowledge, familiarity with our product. And actually, there's a few options. You use it. You use it currently. You have heard about it, but are not using it, or you really don't know a lot about it. So let us know where you're at, and let's see the results, how we're doing here. All right. Okay, that's a nice number. We have a few who are using it, but really some people we're split between people who have heard about it but don't use it, and there's people who don't really know a lot. So I think this is a great opportunity and a great I think a step for us to kind of go over what Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is. And the first thing that I want you to take with you is that it is even though the name states NetApp ONTAP, it is an AWS storage service. And what that means is that it is sold and supported by AWS. And it's really a great storage. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife. I love this phrase. I got it from somebody at AWS. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It has a lot of features that you can leverage. And here you can see where it fits within the AWS storage offerings. So you see it's there. It's a NetApp. You see it's there. It's fully managed AWS storage service. And I reiterate several times just to make sure that you understand this is the AWS service. And it does have a lot of features that make it different from other storage services. And really what it is, it's a lot of features around accessibility. It supports file, block, and object storage. It has a lot of features related to resiliency, high availability. It has snapshots, DR, backup. For data security, we have what we call ARP, immutable snapshots. We have malware protection. We have price performance features so that you don't sacrifice performance just to get because of costs. And finally, around data mobility with cloning, caching, and a lot of features right there. But in order to, it really does have a lot of features that we can spend a lot of time just going into each one of them. But really today I want to concentrate with the four most important ones that are related to operational continuity, optimizing costs, data security and protection, and finally with performance. And first of all, in order for us to look into more detail, let's look at the operational continuity. And I think that's one of the first things when you're thinking about moving to the cloud, you're thinking about how things are going to change, from what I'm doing right now. And the first thing I want to highlight is that we have, because ONTAP is such a mature technology, FSx for ONTAP is based on NetApp's ONTAP technology. That's why the name has the NetApp there. And our technology is quite mature, and we have built those integration with the major software developers. So once you move to the cloud, you can continue to use the same. Let's say you use SAP, you can continue to use SAP. If you use a certain backup provider, you can continue to use it. No matter, like we have that for you. The second thing is that because we support multi-protocol, more workloads can access their data, their applications can access the data from one single storage. So this way, you're not having to have different storage for the different types of data that you have, and you avoid having those storage silos. The third thing, sorry, is the efficient dev test. And instead of creating full copies of production data sets, you can use space-efficient clones to spin up testing environments in seconds with no consumption of capacity. So it's really easy to use. For example, if you're using FSx for ONTAP as your, let's say, your DR site, you can still use that data and spin up dev test environments, and you can get more value of the data that's sitting idle in that DR space, for example. That's just like an idea. And finally, for those of you that are using ONTAP on premises, that already have ONTAP, our technology, the move to the cloud is even easier because you continue to use the same tools, the same workflows you have on-prem. It's just seamlessly translated to the cloud. This, again, I just highlight this applies only for those of you that are using ONTAP on premises, because it's the same language. You're using the same ONTAP on premises and in the cloud. So
I think that's huge, right? I think that's huge because customers don't really need to learn or develop new operational models, right? That's
right.
from, we spoke about, how we shorten the migration, right? But honestly, if you look at the migration end to end, you also need to take into account the post-migration phases, like learning curve and operational efficiencies and so on and so forth. At least at AWS, we are paying very significant attention to operational aspects, right? And
Yes.
having the same tools and having the same kind of working methods when you're migrating to the cloud, that's absolutely amazing.
Definitely. And I think we don't highlight it enough when we have those conversations with customers, and we need to make sure that everybody understands it. So thank you, Evgeny, for that. So moving on for the cost, because everybody's thinking about, okay, how about what's going to happen with costs? So the first thing that you get with FSx for ONTAP is that you stop paying for first of all, it allows you to scale compute and storage independently. The second thing is that you have automatic tiering to the capacity pool, and this one is huge because you don't have to pay like the full price, the SSD cost. You can get whatever. If you have you set the parameters, so if you can set it for 30 days, 60 days, whatever, you can dial it up or down, but depending on your settings. But once the data is determined to be cold based on your settings, it moves to a lower cost tier. So normally, a lot of our customers, about 70, sometimes 80% of their data is cold, and it's sitting there on the primary storage on SSDs, which is more expensive. So the way we work is that it actually automatically tiers that data and moves it to a lower capacity to lower your costs. The other one is thin provisioning. So normally, you provision a certain amount of storage just in case you need to have it, you need to use it. With FSx for ONTAP, you pay for what you actually use, not for the provisioned capacity. So this is also a big one. A lot of customers sometimes on other services, they will be careful not to over provision, and they'll be like right there. And once they start having issues with performance, then they add more capacity. With FSx for ONTAP, you have a lot more leeway, and you don't have to all the time be adding more capacity. You just set the amount you provision, and then you pay for what you're actually using. And finally, you have those built-in storage efficiencies. So we have deduplication, compression, compaction. Um, that actually what they do is that they reduce the size of your estate. So there's less space that's being consumed, there's less waste. And we know a lot of customers, like everyone has duplicated data sitting around. So really what we're trying to do here with all of this is that we're trying to address the sources of waste and trying to make it in a way that you actually pay for what you're using and what you need. And you're not double paying for redundant data, for example. FSx for ONTAP really addresses all these sources of waste.
Yeah, I think by the way, thin provisioning is really popular on premises, right? Because almost all storage providers, on-premise storage providers supports that. But I believe
Mhm.
FS6, if I'm not mistaken, the only one that is providing built-in thin provisioning support in the cloud is FSX
Yes.
on top, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the
Yes.
key kind of concerns for the customer is a cloud bill, right? It's usually starts very low, but it's growing very significantly, right? And if you have thin provisioning on your on premises, you don't really bother about that because it's kind of operational cost or a capital cost. But in the cloud, definitely you do want to control your bill. You do want to control your bill from the day one. And I think FSX for on top basically provides that, right?
Mhm. Yes, it
Okay, that's
does.
how we're looking at that. Okay.
Mhm. And one thing I want to address, because I've seen customers, the first thing they go into the AWS, they check the pricing, and they see that the cost per gig for FSX is higher than other alternatives. And I want to address it right out the bat, and I put the image here of the elephant because I think it's like the elephant in the room. And really one thing that it's really important, and that's why I want to reiterate it here. Um, when you look at the cost per gig, you're ignoring the all of those things that we just covered, like the storage efficiencies, the tiering, the way we do cloning, which is, we didn't talk about, but we're going to cover next. At the end, the bottom line is that if you do the math, in the end, most of the time, we are a lot cheaper than the alternatives. And it can go up to 50%, sometimes more, in terms of savings in TCO. And I like to do that analogy. When you buy an air conditioner, say you buy one with inverter, which is costlier, and then you have the regular one, more, let's say, older technology. Once you factor in those savings that come from the technology that the inverter AC brings, um, it's a lot cheaper to have that type of AC. And it's the same thing here. So I want you to look beyond the cost per gig. And really, what I want you to do is explore those savings. I'm not saying go for FSX. But there are tools that can help you kind of gauge what would be the cost. The first one is called NetApp Workload Factory. It is a tool that we have, and really what it supports EVS and EC2. You can use that pricing. We have a pricing calculator, TCO pricing calculator, and what you do is you can grab your RV tools, or if you use DII from NetApp, you can also, that's even better. But take the flat RV tools file, upload it, and check it out. Of course, the RV tools files is not the best thing to take. It's like gives you a good idea, but if you really are serious about moving to the cloud, the best thing is to go through a storage assessment. And you can do those assessments with AWS, or you can use third party with Matilda or Cloudamize, and they can do like those types of assessments. And they will give you a good analysis and a breakdown of costs, and you can see and really analyze what's the best option for you. So definitely something to think about. And by the way, something I forgot to mention, the Workload Factory tool is free. You just have to log in and create a user, uh, and that's it. You don't even have to put your AWS credentials, really. If you want to use it for managing your account, then yes, but for just for the pricing, for the TCO calculator, you can just use it for free. And I think we actually have a video on how to use that TCO calculator, upload the RV tools files that we're going to be sharing with you in the chat. And then with data security and protection, this is one of those big concerns customers have. Will my data be safe as it is on premises in the cloud? And really, FSx for ONTAP with AWS really can give you that confidence. First thing is to talk about backups. And really, with FSx for ONTAP, you can do backups a lot faster. And really, when I'm talking a lot faster, is significant. Traditionally, your backups take hours. Your backup windows disrupt operations. Recovery is slow and painful. You have to wait for your data to rehydrate. With FSx for ONTAP, we use a technology. We have their snapshots, but our snapshots are different from other snapshots out there. Our snapshots are metadata based, and instead of moving the actual data and copying it, our system creates logical pointers. And that means that the backup creation is completed in seconds. It doesn't depend on how large the data set is, and it doesn't require moving data across the network. It's super fast. It doesn't impact performance as well. And because of all of that, you can actually do backups more frequently. So you have a fresher copy of your data just ready for you to use. And when disaster strikes, you can actually recover faster. We use a technology called SnapMirror for replication, and this is where the replication comes in. In traditional DR, a lot of time is spent trying to reconstruct that storage, rehydrate the data, reconfiguring the environment. With FSx for ONTAP, data is already accessible and it's ready to use in the target environment. So you can use FSx for ONTAP as your DR site. Let's say you have your on-premises and you want to use the cloud as your DR site, or you can have multi-AZ. We support multi-AZ replication. And you have a lot of flexibility. You can achieve really low RPO and RTO targets. And actually a lot of the...
Sorry for stopping you. There is a question
Yes.
about if FS6 improve RTO. And I think the answer is yes,
Yes.
right? Like you said.
Yes, the answer is definitely yes. And we support up to 5 minutes, RPO targets. We're really, really very, very, actually, one of the things that I would like to highlight, a lot of our customers come from very regulated industries like financial industries, healthcare. The bigger accounts are using FSx for ONTAP precisely because of this. Our capacity to support very, very stringent and aggressive targets and and our very solid technology, really. That's what it is. And finally, performance and scalability. FSx for ONTAP really can support very aggressive latency, stringent latencies, very latency sensitive workloads. You can benefit from the cloud agility, and you can still perform. Look at the numbers here, up to 1 petabyte of SSD storage, up to 2.4 million IOPS in sub-millisecond latency. I mean, really, we can support anything. And the best thing is that you can dial it up based on your workloads requirements. That means that you don't overpay. You just dial it up or down depending on what you need. And it's workload specific. So you can really get the best of both worlds, and you can continue to use the same storage. You can use it both for EC2 for those of you that are moving their VMware to EC2. But even if you're moving to containers, just as Evgeny said that Transform can be used for containerized, you can continue to use FSX for ONTAP after you've modernized your VMware and now you're on EC2 and you want to continue modernizing to containers, you can continue to use the same storage with FSX. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's something quite interesting. And I pass it on to you for that migration flow.
So now I think we have a good understanding of the FSX, and thank you, Karen, for this deep kind of an overview. Something was new for me, by the way, which is awesome. Now, if you back to the migration, how the unified migration flow looks like, and we have a couple of slides just to give you some kind of, better understanding of what we are meaning here, right? So to migrate your existing infrastructure to the cloud and use FSX for ONTAP as a file system, you need to create your FSX setup. FSX is a kind of a full-fledged AWS service. So onboarding is pretty easy with a couple of clicks through the console or APIs and do some automation. You can create a file system over there with the relevant capacity, tiers, and so on, and all the features that Karen mentioned, like network security, authentication, and so on. And then you back to the AWS Transform for the migration itself, right? So for the migration, the only one decision that you need to take as a customer is what will be your target storage, right? You need to decide between EBS and FSX for ONTAP. Of course, each one of those storages has its own advantages. We are keeping fully kind of open for the customers and customer choice. We will respect any of that. Once you are defining that or deciding about the target storage, you put it as a replication settings and launch settings for your environment. Start the replication by clicking the button or instructing the chat, and basically we are taking care. By the way, it's similar flow for both for EBS and FSX for ONTAP. There is no difference. We are taking all the heavy lifting of migrating the environment, right? We install the agents on your source virtual machines. We also support agentless option there. We are starting the data replication. This is the first stage to replicate your data to the cloud. Once the data is in the cloud, then basically we can move on. You can launch the test instance, run some verifications, validations on that. Once you are fully satisfied with the results, you run the cutover procedure, and cutover is taking minimal time just to spin up the production instance in the desired subnet and attach the storage using iSCSI protocol. You'll finalize the cutover. We also support some kind of post-install launch actions and so on. And basically then you're done. And then there was a question in the chat about, okay, how long does it take? Usually that takes not so long. You can control the data replication mechanism and bandwidth that is required for the data replication. You can configure your FSX for better performance at higher cost eventually, but you can balance between speed and throughput over there as you wish, or what is your best option for you. Once the data is in the cloud, basically the only time that it takes is to launch the instance and to reconnect iSCSI. That's pretty much it, right? It's easy said than done. We are doing a lot of kind of magic behind the scenes, but from your point of view as a customer, those are the steps. Let's move on and see a couple of screenshots. For those people that are not familiar with Transform, this is how the AWS Transform console looks like. On the left-hand side, you can see the job plan and also the chat that I've mentioned here. You can interact with the system through the chat and get some updates, send some instructions and so on. We can do dedicated session for Transform if needed. The configuration of the storage, you can see it on the right-hand side. And once everything is configured, we are starting the wave, right? And everything done by the waves. Wave can include multiple servers and multiple applications. Usually, we are grouping those servers by the applications based on the connectivity pattern that our discovery tools, Cloud-OMAS, Mobilize IT, and any other application discovery service data was provided. We are doing the initial sync. The initial sync means we are replicating all your data to the cloud. Let's move on to the next one. Once the data is replicated, you are starting the cutover or test and cutover stages when you're basically launching or you are asking and tool does it automatically for you. We're launching the EC2 instance with the specific storage attached, allow you to do some testing, allow you to do some verifications over there and figure out that everything is translated or transferred to the cloud as usual. Once you're done, you are doing the cutover. On the FSx for side, you can see here, we are creating dedicated volumes for your replication and for the cutover, right? So at the bottom, you can see the replication that was created, replication volume that was created for the specific server. Once you are doing the cutover, we are doing a split and creating a production volume from the replicated data and connecting it back automatically to your source server in the cloud, which is, sorry, the target server, which is in the cloud. And basically, this concludes the migration process for you. All right.
Okay. I think we are kind of got into almost on time. I think we can open up for questions. Just before we start with the questions, there's a QR code here if you want to set up a session. It's for free. On talking about Workload Factory, remember that tool that I mentioned earlier that we have that can help you with those TCO analysis and can also help you in the migration and day two operations, actually, but we're not going into that today. But definitely something if you want to explore a little bit more, there's a QR code for you to schedule time. Let's look at the questions. I think you've been checking, Evgeny, you've been checking questions, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions over there. I managed to answer almost all of them. Right. There are some kind of technical questions that are related to the transform itself. For example, if you support flexible IPs or fixed IPs, we support both of them. We support also multi-environment, or we support also multi-account deployments and so on and so forth. So, but those are the kind of features for the transform itself. For the
Okay.
FSx on top, like we said, it is any kind of source storage, right? As long as it is attached block storage, it can be migrated to FSx for ONTAP. Of course, most significant benefit is for customers that have running the ONTAP on their premises because, like you said, they have similar tools, capabilities, and configurations, right? But if you have any SAN attached storage, block storage on your on premises, and you do want to kind of start leveraging those capabilities in the cloud, that transition is happening too as well. So there is no limit for you to from which storage we can migrate to the cloud.
Okay. Yeah. And I see questions about can you do rehosted containers or both? And
Yeah, we can do both.
yeah, you're
The
ready.
decision is on the job level, right? You can create one job that is focusing on the EC2 migrations, another job that is focusing on the containers, right? So you can mix and match any environment in your migration journey. The transform is organized in what we call workspaces. So in the single workspace, you can create multiple jobs, and every job can be dedicated to the specific task, like for example, rehost or landing zone or network migration, or it can be end-to-end from assessment to the final rehost or containers migration as well.
Okay. There's one question here. What happens if I'm running end-to-end support?
Yeah, we are agnostics. We are agnostic to the apps, right? We are agnostic to the apps. We don't really kind of dive into the Oracle version or specific SQL version that you are running on your machine. We are not agnostic to the operational systems. And AWS Transform MGN, the application migration service, basically has supported matrix of the source operating system or systems that we are supporting. And if there is something that is not supported over there, by the way, most of the chances that it will work, but we will need to talk about that and to see if this is something that we can support ad hoc or not. Generally speaking, we support Windows and Linux. For the Linux, we support all the major distributions like Ubuntu, Red Hat, and so on. Check our website, check for the supportability over there for the metrics, and you will figure it out. If the operating system is not listed over there or listed as unsupported, you are more than welcome to reach us and we can talk about your options.
You mentioned something about MGN, and I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the fact that MGN is being rebranded under the AWS Transform umbrella. So it's really, if you're used to using MGN or you've used it in the past, it continues to exist just under AWS, right? The
That's the
umbrella
beauty of the
Transform.
transform because the transform basically is kind of masking the underlying AWS services, right? And AWS has a fundamental belief that two services is better than one, right? But on the other hand, we managed to confuse our customers with the variety of the services that we are supporting, and it's more than 200 services, right? So for you
Yes.
as a customer, it's not really convenient on some extent to figure out, what is the most appropriate service to use for migration, for rehosting, for containers, for so on. And this is where the AWS provides an answer. The AWS Transform basically is an overarching agentic solution, right, that automatically invokes the underlying services that are needed, right? AWS Transform MGN is a standalone solution that you can run as a customer for the rehost. But if you are running AWS Transform for migrations, you don't really need to bother yourself what underlying services is using. Luckily, it's using the MGN today, but it also can use additional services, for example, for containers. We are using Control Tower for landing zone. We are using additional services for other agents. And this is where we are heading to. We are heading to the simple solution with multiple interfaces, being a Kiro or a web console or whatever. When you interact with the tool, and tool basically knows how to navigate to the respective AWS service that best suit for your need.
I think we're almost on time. I want to thank everyone for participating today. I hope the information that we shared was interesting for you and valuable, that you learned something new. And just make sure to give us your feedback. You will, once we close this webinar, you will get a feedback form. So please let us know how we did, and you will get the recording as always. So thank you, Evgeny, for participating to helping us drive this message today. I think it was very educational and interesting for everyone, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us, and hope you are enjoying the session.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.